Well, joining us by Skype, the director and star of Argo, Ben Affleck, who probably can't see that we have a huge sold-out crowd here in New York who just enjoyed this film very much. It did the same thing that happened the last time I saw this movie, which is erupted into spontaneous applause when that Swiss Air 747 takes off near the end of the movie. Let me start by asking you, Ben, we see at the end of the film that this operation was declassified by President Clinton in 1997. When did you first hear about this story and think that there might be a movie here you'd be interested to make?
You know, I really didn't. Obviously, I knew about the hostage crisis and you know, what happened to Carter's presidency and so on, sort of broad brush historical facts from that period. I did not know about this story at all. So about the, you know, the Canadians and the escape and the movie cover and all that. And so the first I heard of it was I got this screen from in 2010 or something, or 9, and they got the screenplay from the George Clooney's company, and they sent it to me, and I read it and immediately thought, like, I absolutely have to do this.
And I think it's the kind of story that, you know, people say it's stranger than fiction, or, you know, it sounds like a movie when you hear this story, but it also kind of sounds like the sort of movie they don't really make in Hollywood today anymore. Not just a movie that takes place at the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s, but the kind of movie that really was last made a lot in Hollywood at that time. Was it an easy film to get going, or were there challenges there? I think this could be said actually of your 3 films that you've directed.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, I have a great affinity for films of the 70s and had probably consciously and subconsciously emulated those. It's just such an extraordinary collection of American realist directors. And with this movie, you know, we had the benefit of sort of, because we were trying to reproduce the late 70s, beginning of the 80s as a period, we, you know, I was able to borrow heavily from films of the 70s because, you know, under the idea that sort of seeing something that looked like it came from that period would help submerge the audience in believing that they were, in fact, you know, in that period. But I love those movies and I love those directors, and so it's probably something that I'll continue to emulate and try to find excuses for doing so.
Can you talk a little bit specifically about working with your cinematographer, Rodrigo Pena, on creating the look, and also with the production and costume designers? Because I think sometimes when we see period films, they feel overdone. They don't actually look like a movie that would have been made at that time. But this really does. It's sort of completely authentic without looking like everything just came out of the store, brand new.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, what we sort of did with particularly the wardrobe was, you know, Jackie West, who did the movies, and incredible and brilliant. I stole her from Malick, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. But, you know, she knew intuitively, and we talked about, we weren't doing Shaft. It couldn't be, you know, fur coats and bell bottoms and sort of trying to be cute and draw attention to it and say, ha ha, look at the 70s, weren't the clothes funny? And in fact, that would upstage and corrupt the movie and make it feel, you know, more comedic and less realistic. And the same went for the design, you know, for the sets, the dressing, all that stuff. It had to be richly realistic, but sort of more distant from the lens, more like textured wallpaper or something like that. And when we worked with the camera and with Rodrigo and figuring out how to make the movie in terms of the literal look of the film, you know, the thing that I decided to sort of break up the 3 areas, DC, Hollywood, and Iran. And so we used different cameras and different film stocks and ways of photographing. I won't bore you with the minutia of them, but you know, we tried to produce with the Hollywood stuff, sort of punchy, saturated, contrasty, kind of like, there's this movie called Killing of a Chinese Bookie, a Cassavetes movie. It wanted to copy that look. It also had the saturation also added to the sense of sort of seediness in Hollywood that we don't see much these days. And for the DC sort of stuff, you know, it was anamorphic. I wanted to look like All the President's Men kind of thing, you know, very like elegant and rich and lustrous and full. And then we did some sort of complicated cameras and the film in Tehran part to make it really different. I wanted to feel different, you know, not have the comfort as a viewer of something that you've seen before.
Yeah, unfortunately, you were breaking up there a little bit. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, but hold on, maybe there you go. I don't want to scare the audience by getting too close. But.
Yes, it's a very big screen. We can do 70 millimeter in here, but not tonight. I want to. We spoke a little bit at the beginning about this really fantastic long set piece at the end, the actual escape from Tehran at the airport and the cross-cutting back to Washington and to L.A. Can you take us through a little bit sort of the planning and execution of that sequence? How precisely scripted was that in terms of what you would be seeing at each moment and what the rhythm would be, and how much of that was something that you were sort of finding as you were shooting it and then finessing even in the editing room?
It was a little bit of both. It got completely constructed in the editing room. I mean, that was really where most of the kind of real work on it was done. It was pretty concretely scripted, the sort of back and forth, where the cross-cutting came in and out, so that I could, you know, shoot transitions in a way that were interesting. And I didn't change too many of those, but, you know, I nuanced it and sculpted it and sort of massaged it. And really what's, to me, you know, I think that ending piece has a nice impact. And I think it works because the actors all the way throughout the movie have made you identify with them and believe that they're real human beings. And so then when I just sort of plainly photograph them in jeopardy later on, it feels quite visceral. And I'd like to take credit for it, but I really think it's a performance accomplishment, frankly.
Well, and as an actor in the film yourself, and also in the town, which some people are going to stay and see a little bit later tonight, can you talk about the challenges of directing yourself in a film? You didn't do it on Gone Baby Gone, but you have done it on the second two films. And is that something you think you'll continue to do, or do you see yourself having a career maybe more like somebody like Clint Eastwood, who nowadays rarely acts in his own films?
I suppose, you know, from a career point of view, you know, I would want to, you know, alternate as appropriate, probably do it less as time goes on. For now, I'm really excited about doing it, and it's fun. I'd act in the first movie because I felt like the optics of that would just be, oh, okay, well, here's an actor, and by the way, he directed the movie. And I wanted to put myself into a world where I could, you know, work as a director, and so make this statement, hopefully, about me succeeding as a director, you know, if I succeeded. And then once I got the chance to do that, you know, do a couple of other films, it was irresistible kind of to put myself in the movie. I mean, you know, the preparation you do as a director, the 14 weeks or whatever it is like the ideal preparation to do as an actor. So it affords you this huge advantage as an actor in terms of what you're able to bring to your performance. And for me, in terms of actually directing myself, the real disadvantage is there's a bit of a sort of zero-sum game in terms of the amount of time in each day. It sounds obvious, but it's really precious. And so when you're eating into that pie that you need to think about how to direct the movie with concentrating on a character and a performance and trying to sort of let the other stuff fall away, you know, it makes it a little harder. But to me, it was worth it. And by directing myself really just came down to shooting a lot of film, trying to give myself the same advantages that I give the other actors, which is all the time in the world, the opportunity to take risks, you know, and the opportunity to sort of not move on unless you have to. And then all the directing I do, the editing room where I, you know, make selections.
And is directing, is that an ambition that you harbored from early on in your career, or did it sort of accumulate over time, the desire to do that? And were there certain directors that you've worked with as an actor who you would say were particularly inspiring or influential to you in terms of the way that they worked on the set?
Yeah, I always wanted to direct. direct, write, act, to me, it was all part of the same sort of thing. I didn't see them as existing. I didn't see these hard lines of demarcation, you know, well, this is the acting silo and that's the directing silo. The theater training that I did involved improvisation, and then we would write down the improvisation, and then we would figure out how to construct a scene out of that, and then try to construct a play from that. So you really were acting, writing, and directing to a certain extent. And, you know, I kind of took it on as a you know, mission later on, but early on it was just it was sort of a fantasy. I wanted to direct things. I directed student films. I liked cameras. I liked editing. I wanted to buy an Avid, but I couldn't afford one, so I tried to build one on a PC, which was a disastrous failure. You know, and I just was really interested in all the facets of what went into it, and I knew from a very early age that that's what I wanted to do. And so what I did was, and probably the smartest thing I ever did, was use my acting career as a kind of a free film school. You know, where you get to stand next to the monitor, you know, and you get to ask the director questions, and they can't fire you for that. So I really enjoyed that, and I learned a lot, you know, and I learned from Gus Van Sant, who was really brilliant about letting actors make their own discoveries. I learned from Roger Michelle, who directed a movie called Changing Lanes, about casting every little part as if it was the lead role, you know. I learned about attention to the writing from Kevin Smith as a director, and that sometimes the writing can do the whole job for you. I probably, the person I looked to the most, Mark Brest, probably taught me the most about directing. But I've tried to take something from everybody. About half the time it was learning by negative example, and sometimes it was positive example, but I kept paying attention.
I'm going to take some questions from our very packed audience here, so just a show of hands.
I like hearing that, even if it's not true.
It is. That's why you should have come, but in the back, all the way in the back, yes? Yes, speak loudly. Yes. Oh, there's a mic, great. Perfect.
Hello, Ben. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Sure.
So one question I had for you. In the very beginning, what motivated you to become an actor?
I was a child actor, which I mostly find loathsome, maybe because I was one, I don't know. But it's, I got into it at 7 years old. A friend of my mom's was a casting director, and then her husband made an independent movie, and I was in that. And then I did this PBS television series called Voyage of the Mimi, which is still forced on sixth graders in science classes all over America. And I got used to it very young, and I developed an affinity for it. And very, very early on, I thought, this is obviously the only thing I want to do. It's wonderful. It's who I am. And so, you know, at that age, I appreciated acting sort of to this extent. And as I grew, you know, I grew to appreciate it and understand it more and more and more.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look you up on the IMDb, there are some early credits where it says something like rumored or unverified, you know, and I like the idea that even in this information age, there are people out there who are sort of scouring, you know, like space camp or something, looking for you in the background of a scene.
Yeah, it's like pre-technology is like prehistoric days. You know what I mean? There was no internet, so how could you know if he was in, you know, Between Friends or whatever? It's hard to tell who's an extra. Before everybody kind of fastidiously, you know, put all their elements of their resume on IMDb. You know, all the extra work they had and stuff.
Let's see, ma'am there, and this towards the center, waving. Yes, very excited. Wait for the mic, though. Yes.
Oh, thank you. The movie is absolutely amazing. But when I saw that movie and I saw the situation at the embassy, I could not help thinking about the situation in Benghazi that happened recently. And I would like to know if you today think of any parallel between the two situations. I guess it was a tricky question, so decided to press the off button.
There we go. I'm back. I got cut off for a sec. Sorry.
Actually, you're
there?
back voice only. There's a spinning wheel on our screen. But anyway, were you able to hear the question about parallels?
That's my best side.
Well, can you hear us?
Oh, there you go. Now I can hear you.
Yeah, a question about the parallels between the situation in Benghazi today and the situation depicted in the film.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we made the movie, we thought there would be parallels to what had happened in the Middle East in terms of the Arab Spring and the Green Revolution. In fact, I thought there were interesting parallels between the Shah and Mubarak, both guys who we sort of we liked because they were pro-Western and pro our agenda, and we sort of turned a blind eye to corruption and oppression and that sort of thing. And ultimately, both guys' popular overthrows, led to these revolutions that were scary for us in various ways. So that's something that I was thinking about a lot. And then as we were releasing the movie, this sort of second wave of incidents happened. The protest or the riot outside the American embassy in Cairo, and the killing, obviously, of the ambassador and others at the consulate in Benghazi. And, you know, first of all, I was like stunned, and I just thought it was tragic. And even more so than the loss of life, or the fact that also, you know, it seemed that history was repeating itself. It was really depressing. It was as if we hadn't moved the needle at all. You know, these images looked exactly like the research images that I was looking at, that I had looked at to make the movie 30 plus years ago. And, you know, you could make the argument that our relationship with Iran, for example, is frozen in time at that moment. And it was, you know, it was kind of saddening because I'd had a lot of hope for the progress in the Arab world over the last couple of years.
Let's go there, ma'am. Yes, waving. Yes.
Thank you, Ben. Can you tell me what might have happened to Sara? The last we saw of her was becoming a refugee in Iraq. Her position changed in the film, I think. Do you know anything more about her?
The actual character of that housekeeper was a man, and I switched it to a woman because I thought that a woman was more emblematic of sort of the people, the real people, the people that were getting sort of tossed around in this in the jaws of this, you know, revolution. And I thought it was really important to represent you know, a Persian character that wasn't part of the revolution, that wasn't violent, that wasn't after somebody, that wasn't political, but that was just trying to make a living, you know, take care of their family and so on. The real guy, he was a guy. He actually went underground in Iran and escaped to Iraq. I liked this sort of irony, I hope subtle irony, of you know, her escaping to Iraq, where of course we know that a year later they fight a war that kills 1 million people, and then several decades later the country is obliterated, the coalition of the willing.
Yes, here, you sir, yes.
Hi, Ben. I know that when Brad Pitt did 7 Years in Tibet, he received some flack from the Chinese government, and I believe, keep me honest here, that he's not allowed in the country now. Have you received any type of statement or any, you know, like has there been anything from Iran?
Yeah, there's actually been a lot more than I thought. I mean, the semi-official news agency, FARS, did a sort of review of the movie, and that, you know, took on this like almost comic Stalinist tone, where, you know, they said that that nobody went to the movie, and that the movie studio bought $20 million worth of tickets and distributed down on the street, and, you know, it was a sort of half crazy, you know, where it's like, I'd rather come off as crazy than, you know, displease the regime. But then there were a number of like bloggers and writers and you know, from Iran who wrote reviews, and some of which were sort of really thoughtful. You know, they haven't said to me, you know, the government hasn't said to me, you know, you can't come here or you're persona non grata or anything. In fact, I would love it, you know, one day to do some kind of a cross-cultural, you know, exchange type thing, artistic exchange thing, travel to Iran, show the movie, talk about it, but only with a political way, and I don't know that that's possible. You know, I think everything is politicized, and that relationship is so fraught right now. And you know, countries on the brink of war are, you know, obviously sensitive in that.
Hi, we're getting someone's getting a message on the screen there. High sound coming from the speakers. I don't know if that's you or us.
I don't know. Let me see. But it's telling me that I'm at 7% power.
Right. Oh, we'll move quickly. We'll take a.
See how the Apple batteries do.
All right. Yes, right here in the front. Just wait for. Yeah.
Hi, Ben. I just had a question about maintaining historical accuracy while having cultural sensitivity in mind as well. How are you able to do that?
Cultural sensitivity is a lot easier than historical accuracy in the sense that, you know, you have these competing instincts. One is as a storyteller, and one is, I guess, in effect, a historian or somebody who wants to hew to this truth of the story. And those sometimes run right along the same track, and sometimes they're almost at odds. And so that was a real challenge to make sure that the embellishments that we made and the sort of license that we took was only in places where it really did just help the storytelling, and it never violated the spirit, the fundamental truth of the incident. And it was a really interesting exercise to go through. As in terms of cultural sensitivity, you know, I was a Middle Eastern Studies major in college, and I've been fairly attuned, I think, to the cultural issues involved in, you know, around this region and the United States. So that was some sort of second nature to me. And I mean, it's not hard at all to be more sensitive than like the typical attitude we have toward this region. You know, it's a pretty low bar.
Yes, there's in the back there. Yes.
Hi, Mr. Affleck. I just wanted to ask you something that I know is not going to make it onto the IMDb trivia section. Is the blue Chewbacca, was that actually part of the Argo originally? Like that actual screenplay?
No, but I just like the idea that it was such a broke operation. They just took like a Chewbacca outfit and made it blue. And I could see Alan Arkin's character just being like, you know, waving off any concerns. No one will know. You can't hardly tell. So, that was some of the most fun stuff, that like B-movie sci-fi vibe. I watched all these late 70s science fiction movies. They're incredible. Like how you have these the great movies of science fiction, you know, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Alien, you know, those Blade Runner, right along with some of the worst, schlockiest, cheesiest stuff you've ever seen in your life. And I don't know what I had more fun watching, you know, the schlocky stuff or the greats. It was really like just stuff where you'd watch and think, did you guys even care? Were you even trying? Like a 2200 AD, you know, it was just it was ridiculous and funny and great.
Thank you.
And I think we have time for one more over here, sir. Yes, you. Yeah, just wait for the mic. Yeah. So then Ben's going to run out of power.
That's 5%.
Hi, thank you for this film. Thank you. But
thank you very much.
Did you rehearse the actors very much? Do you tend to do that?
You know, I would do it more. It unfortunately is a hallmark of contemporary filmmaking that actors never seem to have time to rehearse. For some reason, it always turns out that everyone's like available the day before they start. And you're squeezing people in and trying to manipulate them and block people out, shoot them out. So it was frustrating. Luckily, with actors like this, you know, they were real pros. I mean, they really knew their way around a movie. You know, I mean, Alan and John and Brian and with the 6 house guests, they were available. And what I did is I made them all live in the set that was the house for a week, just with like, you know, dressed in the period, own period elements, took their phones, put in period movies, records, newspapers, magazines. try to let them soak it up, and also have them feel that's being bunkered in together and hiding. I'm not sure if they got that, sense, or if they every night, but whatever it was, it still worked because they came out and they felt like a unit. They felt like who each other.
Ben, I just want to ask you before we wrap up here, for people who are going to stay and see the town, if you
don't do it.
If you could just say a little bit about that experience, particularly because I think like the title suggests, the city of Boston is itself a character in the film, and what it was like making that movie on location there.
Yeah, the city is definitely a character, but only because the character of the city is such that it kind of fits into the tone of the movie. There's a sort of doomed, tragic, conflicted duality, and that's really what this guy's life is about. And it wants to raise questions about who we are. Are we destined to be a certain person? Can we overcome that? Can we change our lives? I really liked it because I felt the movie was a drama that explored themes that I was really interested in, and sort of wrapped in the shell of a genre movie. Like look over here, we have shootouts. T.S. Eliot said that in his plays, he always felt that the plot was like the meat that a burglar would throw the guard dogs to distract them while the thieves broke into the house. The sort of subconscious. And I always like that, and I really feel the action elements are sort of do that in this movie in some way, or at least that was the idea. And I didn't want to do any more stuff in Boston after this, at least for a while, because I didn't want to run the risk of sort of like falling back on what I knew. But it was a case where I sort of availed myself of everything that I had gone through and all the people that I had met and the sort of life that I had had, particularly until I was about 25, living in Boston. And that was when Charlestown was really, as I'm representing it now. Nowadays, it's not really like, speaking of historical accuracy, like what you see in the movie. That's actually a depiction of Charlestown kind of probably in the late 90s, height of its bank robbery problem. They killed a couple of guards. We used the story and give it to the guy playing my father, pretend that my father did it, but 2 guards were executed, and finally the FBI completely cracked down and sort of broke the back of these gangs. But, it was an interesting movie. I'm glad it was also, inspired by like The Verdict or Friends of Eddie Coyle. These same sorts of '70s movies. I seem to keep being drawn to this stuff. Maybe it's just that you don't have to move the camera very much, and I'm lazy. But it's really, I love making the movie, and the acting really so I got lucky with a good cat.
We lost you there just at the end, but I think that's a sign that it's time to wrap up and get on with the second half of the double feature. But Ben Affleck, thank you very, very much for Skyping in with us tonight.